What do you see ahead? What are the problems and the solutions that we can expect, especially given military governments in power?
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, I would like to, at the outset, allowing me this opportunity, and I thank you for allowing me to speak about this dear area, an area that is dear to my heart, and it has suffered over the years, and it's still suffering. The Sahel region, as you know, and as you have heard and read, suffers from terrorism. And this terrorism is growing day by day, and there are also crises and conflicts between ethnic and groupings in the area. It suffers as well from poverty, from desertification, and people who live in these areas, especially in areas far away from cities and urban areas, they don't have enough services. Basic services are not available for them. In addition to this, there's an increasing number of inhabitants that are moving from one area to another due to climate change. And this leads to internal displacements, and in turn leads to migration to other areas and displacement outside of Mauritania. And due to all this, we saw the birth of the group of G5, the Sahel G5 coalition. And this was really to bring about unity in the efforts in order to deal with these kind of problems that face us. And this initiative really was supported by the European Union to deal with two main problems, and also to look at the aspects to do with security and development. And in collaboration with the European Union, we have seen new and available strategic opportunities for the areas and for the European Union as well. Because we can say that Sahel is the southern geopolitical border of Europe. And consequently, any deterioration in conditions within this area will reflect negatively on security and stability, not only in the Sahel area, but also will extend to Europe. These threats that are posed against Europe can be manifested in terms of the ability to have energy, but also there's another important question to do with migration. Migration from the Sahel area. There are a lot of young people who are desperate to find opportunities to work. So you will see more and more young people migrating and moving to Europe. All these things will also lead to some criminal activities, cross-border criminal activities. We noticed today that all the strategies that have been adopted by the Sahel countries and the European Union started to show that it's not really achieving its purposes and what was expected of it. Therefore, today, we have to review these strategies and bring them up to date in order to be able to deal with our problems as partners with the European Union. This kind of interdependence and intertwining security problems, be it in the Sahel countries or Europe, needs us to take action. This is our view. We see that the guarantor of permanent peace would be this kind of cooperation. And within this context, I have a number of ideas that might be really relevant in terms of updating this strategy. These ideas I have summarized in 4 points. The first one is about the holistic cooperation, more inclusive and holistic cooperation. This cooperation has to focus on preventing conflicts in advance and strengthen as well the resilience of the Sahel states. The second point is strengthening the coordination between the various strategies and initiatives that are related to the Sahel. The third point is we have to continue to pool the resources of the Sahel countries and strengthen the cooperation between the Sahel countries, because we have a lot in common. The fourth point is that the European Union is a strategic partner in Sahel. Consequently, they have to, or it has to, increase its support and speed up all actions in order to give us assistance and help. We know that the EU has procedures, but really they're very lengthy, and intervention has to be in time. And as you know, we are developing countries, and any interventions have to be speedy in order to fulfill its purpose. In conclusion, I can say that through adopting this comprehensive and coordinated approach, strengthening the capabilities of the defense and security forces in the Sahel area, and by focusing on conflict prevention and supporting overall economic development, this will really help us to build and develop a stable Sahel area and a prosperous one for the future generations. Thereby, we will have transformed the Sahel region to a land of opportunity, an area of opportunities. It shall be stable and prosperous. And that will bring about a lot of opportunities. And it will bring also mutual benefits to both. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And I'm very glad that you struck a positive note at the end of your remarks, because I think you're right that with great challenges also come great opportunities. But actually, Svenja Schulze, a lot of what the minister said sounded like something that you're either already working on or about to work on. Can you give us a bit more insight into what the priorities are for German development cooperation with the Sahel region countries?
Yeah, first of all, I think the main message is we need to stay engaged in the region, because the minister told us before, the region is really hit hard by climate crisis. It is hit hard by hunger, by conflicts, and it is our neighbor. It's the neighbor from Europe, and it is in our interest to help to stabilize our neighbors. And that is what we are doing in the Sahel Alliance. because there are two of it. I like to explain, there are the Sahel Alliance. I'm the president of it, the alliance of the donors. We are 18 of the donors who are active in the region. And we are all convinced that it is really, really important to give support to the people of the Sahel region, because there is such a lot of terrorism, there is such a lot of hopelessness, that it is needed for all the young people, and there are a lot of young people, the average age is, I think, below 20. There needs to be a perspective for the people. And so many of the members of the Sahel Alliance responds to the coups in the region and adjust their development programs, but we are still active. We adjust the programs on the community level, reduce the cooperation with the central governments. We increase our multilateral or civil society channels. For example, the Alliance is taking targeted steps to strengthen civil society stakeholders. They are also acting as critical voices in the transition processes. And we have projects to strengthen civic participation on a community level, for instance. And we work closely together with all the organizations from the United Nations that are in the region, closely with UNICEF, with the World Food Programme, with the World Bank, because we need to build more resilience. What the minister said before, we need to build social safety nets so that when the next crisis hit the region, for example, problems with the water, that there is a social safety net to provide, for example, food security. And what I would like to point out is that human security means that we need to take care about food security, about health security, about economic security, and that for that it is really important to address the various causes of crises, the causes of terrorism. And the causes are that people need to have a perspective, that they need to have a job, or that they need to have a social protection system that helps in crisis. And how we do that, maybe to give you one example, to strengthen agriculture is really important, because that helps in the security, that helps to secure the food situation, that creates jobs, that creates better income opportunities, and that makes it harder for terrorist groups to recruit people in the region. So that is one of the things we are doing together, for example, in the central and southern Mali, where the terrorists fighting is really intensively. We train farmers to climate-smart production of rice, of vegetables, so they can increase their yields and pay their workers, have better income, send their children to school. We enable them in the next step to provide, to be engaged in cooperatives, and with these cooperatives make the production more professional, enter local markets, get access to finance, and create further jobs. And that is only one example how we can work in that region to be part of the solution, to be part of that what is needed in the region. Another that I would like to point out is to develop local administrative capacities, because a lot of the young peoples, they cannot experience the state as something that gives solutions to them. And enhancing local administrative capacities, provide basic services such as water, as health, as education for citizens. I think that is really important, and our cooperation is also focusing on that, develop local administrative capacities so that the help for the people is organized from the region and that the solutions come from the region. And I think that is one of the most important facts. We can help the governments, we can help in the regions, but the solutions for the Sahel, they need to come from the people in Sahel, that there is enough capacity, there are ideas. You hear that a minute before, and what the international community needs to do is to bring that ideas forward, to bring our capacities, our ideas, the money that is in the region to these ideas, and help that the solutions of the region be realized. And that is why we still engaged in the region. It is needed. It is not easy with all the coups around, but there are such a lot of people, there is such a lot of need that we need to stay engaged there.
Thank you. I mean, I think you put the finger on the very, well, the crux of the matter is that if you disengage out of matter of principle, you don't help to solve the problem, but if you stay engaged, you also validate the existing government. So I think it's always a priority, a choice that you have to make.
Yeah, but that is daily work in development cooperation, because there is no black and white, and we are still able to work and to bring, for example, agricultural farmers forward, and do not stabilize the government that is not elected. That is possible. It is always hard, I know. But we find a way to be engaged and to bring that forward.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to Lassina Zerbo. You were the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso. You had a very interesting time, and during your time in government in particular, I think is noteworthy your outreach to terrorist organizations. You were invited to dialogue. What is your gaze on the situation right now with terrorist organizations increasing, instability, and these huge challenges ahead? What are silver linings that you can offer us beyond all of this?
Thank you.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, it works, yeah. Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to come back to the Munich Security Conference. I met many friends who say, we were worried about you. But thank God, I still go to Burkina, and then I can travel out and then continue my international duties. I wanted to first thank the minister for what she said. Europe must stay engaged. Germany must stay engaged. And the Minister of Defense of Mauritania pointed rightly by saying G5, the aim was G5 was to mix development and security assistance or security cooperation from the Western countries, mainly Europe. The question we should ask is why 3 countries will decide to leave G5 Sahel and then put G5 Sahel in jeopardy. So I was asked yesterday if it's a wise decision. I mean, the point is not about whether it's a wise decision or not. It's a sovereign decision that they've made, and then we have to go to the root causes of their decision. Because the first goal of G5 Sahel, as he rightfully put it, was precisely what this region needed to help deal with the terrorism. But it hasn't functioned the way it was anticipated to do for several reasons. Priority had changed. The perception that came from the Sahel region was that there was so emphasis somewhere else, next to you in Europe, than it should have been for the G5 Sahel in terms of, funding, deploying equipment to help fight with the terrorists, and that hasn't been felt happening by some government within the G5 Sahel. And that had led to them pulling out. But you see, if I take water, I take the Sahel region where water scarcity is probably one of the most evident that you can see in Africa today. I was listening to a young lady, I think Nasrin, she's from Sudan, from a different panel, and then she said she's from an institution or an NGO, and then they were asking for money. And then they said, no, we can't fund you because there's a military government in your country. But it's precisely because they are the most vulnerable people that needed assistance or needed cooperation in a win-win situation that you should stay engaged. You don't have to say because it's a military government, we don't go there. Because when you say it so bluntly, you put the government and the population to put you at risk with regard to the way they see your cooperation. And I think Germany has an important and a leadership role to play today in Africa. Because when we mention Sahel, those three countries, it's about the perception they have with regard to a specific country in Europe. How Germany can play the leadership by not replacing that particular country, but helping that country to play the role it should have played and avoid the perception that is being seen in the region. And I think I've been discussing with GIZ, and you pointed out exactly the way people would love to hear you saying in Africa. I think if you're having this type of dialogue, this type of, discussion with the three countries that have left the G5 Sahel, I think they will change their mind with regard to how they perceive Europe. Trust me. But I'm coming to another point, which is the discussion we're having right now. Wherever I go, they say, okay, why the Sahel region is letting, Russia invading its territories and whatever. My question is, are they coming proactively, or are they filling a gap or a void that was left by others? That's a question that you should ask yourself. In our culture, in Africa, I think it's valid for you as well. When I'm in trouble and you stay with me, you will be my friend forever. But if you run away because I'm in trouble, when I'm safe or safer, if you come back, I'll say, why should I deal with you again? Because somebody else would have taken your place, and then I'll be dealing with that person. So what I'm asking you in Europe, and especially you in Germany, is to stay engaged. Stay engaged with civil society, stay engaged with the youth, stay engaged with people who are willing to make a difference for this continent. And then when you talk about the water issue in the Sahel, I think I have a few points. We have to have your support in peace building and reconciliation. You can't run away from it or give the perception that you're running away from it. Without reconciliation and without peace, there is nothing that can be achieved in that Sahel region. Second, to address the climate change and environmental degradation in a very pragmatic way. How do we address that? We have a problem. Don't say because it's not a democratic government, we don't come to help you. She just mentioned agriculture. Agriculture, you don't have to only go with the junta or a military junta or anyone else to do what you can do to help the population. You can do it via GIZ, you can do it via regional local institution. There are many ways to help the population and work with them hand to hand, rather than saying, this is what we want to do for you until or unless you do that. That's not the approach you should have with Africa or the Sahel region today. How can we work together? How can we work with you to make a difference? That's what people are expect from you. The third point, which is linked to what I just said, it's enhancing international cooperation and coordination. Enhancing international cooperation it's not the way the international community would support the Sahel region. That's not the way. It's not the nature or the character, or we have to play with both. It's how you enter those countries in a way where they can listen to you. Because that's what it's all about. Are they ready to listen to you? Right now, the perception is that they're all running away. We'll only listen to those who are ready to talk to us. Talk to us in a partnership way, not telling us what to do. There are some incidents that probably we cannot, mention here. Even myself, when I was in government, it's all about attitude. And that's something that we should reflect about. There is a generational change. People have different mentality. They see things differently. The younger generation, there are things that they cannot tolerate anymore. Why? Because they've gone to the same school, they've done the same study. When they go back, they want to implement whatever they've seen in the Western country or elsewhere. How do you approach that implementation with them? And that's why I'm coming back to my point. Germany you should play a leadership role in Europe in making sure you stay in the Sahel, you stay in Africa in a way where people can listen to you. So another point that I want to mention is we talk about energy. And I was talking to the EU Commissioner yesterday about the way things are changing in Africa today. It is true, you're asking a shift between, to shift from fossil fuel to clean energy or renewable energy. But in that process, some countries have been signing MOU with African countries on nuclear energy. At the time when Europe was debating whether nuclear energy is a way to go, or should even be the way to go. But when you talk about innovation, and that was mentioned shortly before me, innovation makes a difference. And geopolitics can accelerate the energy transition, where people can make a choice whether they want to be, a liberal choice, whether they want to go with nuclear energy. We cannot say we only fund you when you do renewable. We only fund you when you go solar. We only fund you where you go wind. If you take the return on investment with regard to energy sources, solar is pretty low, and nuclear is pretty high. And in between, you have hydrogen that is getting closer, but at 50% less than nuclear energy. So we have to balance this and see how best we can talk to the population who are aiming to do what has helped industrial development in the West. And that's what people want. And then that's valid for climate diplomacy, it's valid for water diplomacy. I was engaged with the former president of Slovenia when we met in Kazakhstan 2 years ago. And then we wanted to do a big conference in water diplomacy in Niger with, at the time, President Bazoum, involving Lac Chad, okay? And then we started working on the process. I started working on the process regionally. And then there was a coup, and then it's over because those who were ready to finance the project for having this water diplomacy project in that region say we can't come because, it's a military government. No. Let's continue with the project because the project is not for a specific government, the project is for the population. That's my last point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we heard the message loud and clear, and I also have a feeling it's shared. Hélène Conway-Mouret, you are on the Defense Committee, so allow me to ask you a security question. MINUSMA has left after 10 years. What do you see as the consequences, especially for Mali, but also the wider region in security terms?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers to have organized this panel because I know there are very pressing international issues, but I do believe that Africa is going to play a major part in shaping our future, and not just that of Europe. Indeed, we are very sensitive, I suppose, in Southern Europe about having just a little bit of water separating Europe and Africa, and therefore we are sensitive to that. But I think the whole world will need the tremendous resources of Africa, and I'm talking about its youth, its populations, and indeed, in the future, the role it can play also in natural resources, and some countries, unfortunately, have understood that and are very much present now. In terms of security, yes, France, I think, has made the mistake to believe that there may be no development without security and no security without development, except that it has put all its eggs in the one basket, which is that of security, believing that by being present, responding in Mali to the call of the then president, who was under attack, France responded quickly. I think it was a military success, because Bamako would have fallen into the hands of jihadist groups, and that would have been bad news for the whole region with the formation maybe of a caliphate. So that was prevented. But then France stayed, and it stayed until it was asked to leave, and not just to ask to leave in Mali, but then in the Burkina Faso, and lastly in Niger. So 3 countries in 2 years. So something went wrong, and I think we need really to look at the mistakes that were made. I think from the first point I would make is that while France was welcome as a liberating army when it arrived in Mali, after 10 years it was felt to be an occupation army. And the local populations did not see the work that was done. And indeed in Mali it's starting to show, because the displacement of the population is growing very rapidly. There are nearly 3 million people now having had to leave since the French troops left. And a lot of villages are under attack now. So France was doing the job, but it wasn't seen to be done properly. Insofar as there was a conventional army in a camp in Gao, and then there were these groups, young men, not being radicalized, simply recruited because of no hope in life to earn a decent living, and joining those groups because in one day they will earn what they would normally earn in 1 year. So the main cause of what was happening and what we call terrorist groups, I think, is poverty. I think it's just a lack of perspective for people who just want a decent life. And indeed, having spent about 1.2 billion, because I'm also rapporteur for the budget in the Senate, we spent 1.2 billion on security in Mali. Had we spent 1.2 billion on building schools, on fixing wells so that the local herds wouldn't have to be going away, or indeed having the local administration, and I think this is very important, because in Mali there was the capital city and there was the rest of the country. But the rest of the country was left to its own, with no government presence. And therefore, those groups, and I think they were mostly there blackmailing the local populations and, drawing whatever little resources they had, increased the poverty and increased the recruitment that was possible. So when French troops indeed were in a position to diminish the impact that they had, even though some were eliminated, others were recruited immediately. So there was no end. And I think France was just too slow to understand it. 10 years was far too long. Had it left after indeed responding to what it was asked to do, it would have been quite different. So I think we're now drawing the lessons from all of that. And indeed, we had a text in the Parliament to review the objectives of the public aid to development. And we're very much now in a situation where we're looking at a win-win partnership. And the term partnership is very important, because I spent a lot of time in Africa and I have a lot of friends. And they, what the Prime Minister just said is just so right, that there is a youth and young generation, well-educated, who is ambitious. And they are just not prepared to be told what to do. And even though we may be putting out our hands and saying, well, here we are presenting you with projects that will cost millions because we believe it's right for you, they know very well that a lot of them will never come to life because it will feed the local, unfortunately, endemic corruption in a lot of countries, while we should be spending our money, and I go back to the local visible projects that may be small, but do make the difference. Education of the young people makes the whole difference as to them not being recruited easily to join those groups. And I don't like calling them terrorist groups, because those young people, and I've met some, they're not terrorists. They just wanted a different life. And they thought, because they saw somebody coming on a motorbike or a pickup, that will change their life. But they didn't like what they had to do. And when they have a chance to stop, they're quite happy to do so. So just to finish on the point of security, as that was your question, France would be prepared to stay. You invited Germany to be present and so on, but France had been asked to leave. And there again, there is a point I would like to make. It was asked to leave because it believed, especially Niger, which is the last country, that it had to preserve the values, democratic values, to the end. Except that when it found itself on its own, maybe France should have thought, well, if I'm the only one to defend those values, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. I believe that in theory we were, but I heard the term pragmatism, and I think at some point, yes, one ought to be pragmatic. We don't have all generals taking power. We have young army officers who believe that they can change, that the country needed a change, and that's what happened in Mali, it happened in the Burkina as well, and it happened in Niger. And that is another sign that there is this generation that want changes. And while I'm not advocating that the military should stay in power, and I believe that nobody wants that, I think we should accompany the countries through development, through a different presence. And in agriculture, I would just like to finish with that. Why not ask the aid that we will be providing simply to provide food for the local populations instead of growing French beans or whatever during the winter, so that in Europe we would be eating vegetables that grow in the south that require a lot of water but do not benefit, except for those maybe who grow them, to the local populations. We also need to change that and just turn the whole thing around as to what the populations want, how they want it, and then to respond to those needs and requests, and not pretend or continue pretending that we know best and that what we will be giving somehow will comfort us that, yes, we were generous. That is not what is expected anymore from us. For security now, I think the French presence is going to diminish greatly in other countries as well, to be less visible, because that was another problem, that by being visible, we were the scapegoat. It was so easy to say, and there was kind of local propaganda also, maybe populist, maybe because there was a gap there and used by other countries, but they didn't generate it. It was easy for them to just participate in that and make France indeed the targeted country to be evicted.
Thank you. I promised you earlier I would open the room for questions, but I think we're out of time. And no, can I take one? Okay, then allow me to give the floor to Nadia Fonton. She's a Munich young leader. Can you please introduce yourself? And if you have a concrete question, if you can tell me who you wish to answer, that would make it a little easier for me.
Thank you. You can hear me? Yes.
Yes.
So I am Nadia Fonton. I am working in the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So first of all, thank you very much for Munich Security Organization to have organized this panel. It's very insightful and important. Maybe just firstly a remark. I think we all agree that we should stay present and engaged in Sahel because it's very important for population who are suffering. But my question is, okay, we are facing some regime who have put out some important partners. We have put out recently the UN, MINUSMA. We have put out all the peace process in northern Mali. We have been getting out the G5, ECOWAS. So my question is how we, international partners, could engage with those regimes. How can we convince them two things? First of all, to go on with regional and international cooperation, because to face all those challenges, Sahelian population need regional cooperation. And my second question is how to engage those regimes to convince them to restore constitutional order, to restore rule of law and I would say resilience institution. Thank you.
So a tricky question, Svenja, but you were nodding. Can I volley it to you?
I think the person who knows an answer that is delivered in 2 or 3 minutes that earn the Nobel Prize. that is the hard things we need to deliver. And I think one of the solutions is work with respect to the people and do not think that we know all the answers. I think we need to deliver the answers on a regional, on a local level. We need to show that we are close to the problems of the region, the problems of all the young people, and show that democracy is the best answer. And then the democracy must come from the people and from the region and be delivered there. In Mauritania, we have a democracy over decades now. The people are able to work in that. And I think the ability is there, also in Mali, also in Niger, also in Burkina Faso, and we need to do what we can to solve the problems and not convince the people, allow the people to do the job, to create this democratic environment, give perspective to the young people, enhance the food security, bring the state on a local level to a visible solution. And that is what we can do. And I think we need more respect, more transparency, more discussion, what is needed there to really bring solutions to do that, to that region. And talking openly, frank, about our interest and what we think is a solution, but listening also to the solutions of the region. That is something we should get better in.
Hélène, you also wanted to jump in?
Well, yeah, very shortly. I share what you said there. Yes, see it as a transition. It's very painful to be asked to leave, of course, but all of those institutions who have been asked, just let's think that, okay, the military in place may not be in a rush to give up power, but it will be forced at some point to do so. And that's what we have to count upon. When the aid we can bring, the development of the country will prevail, I think the military will be naturally going out of power. Now, we have to count on that. It's not certain, but I really don't see how we can do otherwise at the moment. And I don't think that the approach is right to say, how can we convince? It is not for us to convince. I think it is, again, to turn the whole thing around. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. And be the recipient of the request rather than those who propose.
Lassina, you also had a brief point.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what the minister just said, and Hélène as well. Hélène, I want to recall our discussion 2 years ago, or even 2.5 years ago. I was passing by Paris, and then I told Hélène, at that time, Burkina was still, France had not left Burkina Faso, had not left Niger. But what did I tell you at the time? I said, if you don't change your strategy, you will have other countries following Mali.
And I agreed to it.
Yeah, and you agreed to it. And I said, I gave her my reason. And the reason is precisely how we approach the question that the young lady was just putting. It's not about convincing. It's about, first of all, we should go with regards to solid institutional framework in our cooperation, be it in security, be it politics, be it climate diplomacy, energy diplomacy. We have to have strong institutions. Strong institutions that go with education, information, partnership, and that will not allow coups, military coups, but also constitutional coup. I've been in discussion where people are asking, why you only talk about a military coup, and then when a democratically elected president decides to change the date of the election, and then nobody talks? Those are questions that the young people are asking themselves. Even if I don't, that's what people are asking me. So what do you say about that? So it's not about going and telling people this is what you have to do. It's about why are you telling us to leave? Can we talk? That should be the approach. Can we talk?
I'm very glad that you gave me that note at the end, because remember I said in the beginning we need a silver lining, and I think we have a lot of problems, but I heard a lot of consensus actually. Basic agreements, stay engaged through the problems, stay with your friends. And actually I would like to invite the audience to thank in particular our two African friends who came all the way to Munich in this terrible cold weather. Thank you to my panelists. We have to leave the room for the next one. Please join me in an applause.